बिल्कुल भी नहीं आते।
महक के सामने मैं क्या कंटेंट बोलूंगी पता नहीं, बट आई
हाँ,
होप आई
हाँ,
हैव अ बेटर टेक ऑन।
मैं इधर ऐसे बस हाथ खोल के बैठी हूँ, जो बोलोगे सब ऑब्जर्व करूंगी आज।
And we are good. I think we are 32, and I think in a couple of minutes more people should join. So we are good with 32.
We'll start.
Yeah. So quickly, Anu, I think I realized yesterday the Red Hook introduction in India, and I'm not very sure if, how many people really know. So I think we'll start first that you could give an introduction. Intel के team को तो हम सबको तो पता है आपको हमारे लिए क्या हो, but I think for the rest of the team, if you could also just take them through your work profile, that will just give them an understanding. But just to let the others know a quick understanding. So Anu for us takes care of the entire content, and she's been with us for the last over 2 years. If you guys remember PC Parchala, she was one backing force there for the entire project. मतलब जिसने उस प्रोजेक्ट में हाथ मारा उसको पता होगा कि वो कितना बड़ा ह्यूमंगस प्रोजेक्ट था. And otherwise also I think I personally learn a lot of things from her on how to manage publisher relationship, because जब वो कुछ पब्लिशर से मांगती है तो पब्लिशर उसको दे देता है, और हम भी मांगते हैं तो हमको तो क्या मैसिव लेवल पे इग्नोर मिलता है वो मैं बता भी नहीं सकती. So she's managed to have these relationship over the last many years. She's built that over time. So I just thought a lot of us, including us with a lot of experience also, हमको नहीं समझ आता कि वो relationship कैसे maintain करना है. And also a lot of content projects that she does for Intel. And otherwise, she's a pure media professional. But I think while she took up this role of content here, and there's a massive experience that she holds here, I just thought it's going to be great to get her on board and talk about how she's managed that in the last 20 years. Anu, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Megha. Thanks for this great opportunity to talk to loads of these young minds whom I learn a lot from on a daily basis, especially the young team, whether it is Tejveer, who is the newest kid on the block. But I mean, there's loads to learn from them. But yeah, I have been in the industry for quite long now. I just realized when I was trying to, when my Megha said you have to talk about yourself, I was just checking. I actually completed 30 years in this industry, and I still feel that I don't know a lot. I'm still learning, and I'm enthusiastic to learn a lot of stuff. I mean, what these young kids do today, I think I'm nowhere there. But it's been a fantastic journey. I left full-time working in the media industry in 2016, then started teaching. I teach media in Symbiosis in the Bangalore campus, and a couple of subjects in Pune also. I teach media there, and that's when I realized that after so many years, I still want to get back to media. So one foot in the agency was the opportunity that Kara gave me, and I'm here. With Intel, my journey has been for this year I complete about, even with the gap, it's about 10 years that I worked on this business. So I'm Intel inside, mental outside. That's where I am. But yes, it's been fantastic because Intel, I think, has, if all those who have worked on Intel and those who have heard the stories of Intel, the team from the Intel team, I think it's a very challenging account because it's about a processor which is inside the computer. You can't see it, but how do you make it exciting for the consumer, and how do you make them buy that and believe in that little processor inside the computer? That makes the difference, and how you bring it up. So I think it was always a challenge how to bring it forth in front of the consumer and make them excited about the product. So it's that's where I say that's a lot of learning for me per se also in these 10 years of handling Intel gave me, whether it was from handling the account as being the lead on the business versus learning digital, learning the new technology, learning being one-stop shop for literally for all the kind of activations and content. And that's when the love for content really came up, because there's so much that you can do, because especially with Intel, the big challenge was that you had international creatives. How do you go to the smaller tiers with that creative, talking to them and convincing them that how what does Intel do, and that's the reason that you need to buy your laptop. So those interesting things that we did. So that's when my interest for content really came up. And yeah, and from there on, I realized, yes, that's one of my core abilities that I have picked up over the period of time. That's about me. And today, what Megha has given me this scope, as she mentioned, that to talk about content and how to handle a publishers. Yes, it's a task, but the way I see them is publishers as an extended partner. If you treat them as partners, the way you look at that partnership and the way you look at that relationship changes. And that's what I have done over a period of time. And that's how I learned. And there are tons of friends in the industry now after so many years that you've built that relationship over a period of time. So today, the way I'm constructing this, there's no PPT. You can ask me questions. The way I'm looking at it is a section on how each of the pegs, whether it is the client, the publisher, as well as the agency, how each one of us play a role in this whole space of building content for the client. And I'll take a little bit of time to understand the how do you handle these projects in terms of management, in terms of once you do that whole integration bit, you discuss it, all that, but it's nothing really is good enough till you actually till the last end of your deliverable that you have reached to the client without any problems, without any glitches, and with the tick mark from the client. I think that's the core. I mean, that's where the biggest crux of this whole piece is, and that's when you need the maximum support from your publishers, maximum support from even from your client, because you need that approvals on a regular basis. So I'll take a little bit of time on that. So that's what I want to cover today. Hopefully I should cover in this 1 hour that you've given me. So before we start, I want you all to answer one question for me. Okay, I'll just release one uh, poll. All the people on the call, I would like you to answer that. Yeah, so I'll just give me 2 seconds. Let me just.
अनु बोला या क्वेश्चन है ऐसे कुछ आंसर करने का कुछ मिलेगा क्या
हाँ हाँ उसमें वही है क्वेश्चन so you have to just answer that. Why can't I see it now? I created, yes, 1 second. So I've launched the question. If you can quickly submit. First step to working on any content project, as per your understanding, what as a person that you're handling content, whether whichever role that you're playing, whether you are a planner, buyer, implementation planner, whatever, whichever role that you're playing in the space that you are in handling your brand, what is it that you think that as a content specialist or a content manager, what is it that you need to know the best before you start off any project? All are finished answering? Great. I think most of them have answered correctly, as in, I think you've understood that. Yes, the brand of the product and the target audience, these two are the critical bit that you need to understand, because the point is when you start off your journey in terms of content for any brand that you handle, you should know inside out of the product, where it is, how it is, what is the competition. I mean, as much as you know, you should be able to understand about the product. And similarly, you should be also knowing about your consumer. I think Mehak had taken as part of her DFP download that she had given us, uh, as to how you ideate on ideas. I think this is the next step of post ideas have done and you have decided to take up with the publisher. How do you start, thinking of what is the best kind of content integrations that can be done with the publishers? I think that's the next step from where what Mehak had taken us through. So the whole point is that how do you understand that, because the nuances of getting that right content integration within any kind of publisher, whether it is online, offline, it's, I think the media, it's media agnostic. So you need to know what is it that ticks, what is your consumer liking, what is the kind of content that you will be able to, place your product in, or your message, the product message inside that community, in that content space, that the engagement is going to be beautiful. The take of that, from that, what the consumer takes away from that will be beautiful. So that's that nuances that you get from that. So just let me give you one example of how I'd handled one of my clients in the past that I had done. We had launched a client called Carrot Lane, which is an online jewelry account. Right. So the whole point is that the client had certain communication, and he had given us a brief that it would be for a working woman. A working woman only is the TG for that communication. So when we saw the communication, when we heard about the product from the client, and we discussed, understood the consumer who it is, that's when our first question to the client was, why is it that it should be a working woman? Woman sitting at home, maybe a homemaker, will have that similar kind of, the pester power that can work with her when she talks to her boyfriend or her husband or whoever it is, that they can swipe. She doesn't need to necessarily have her own credit card. She can borrow that credit card and she buy it as long as she swipes it and buys it. So why does it have to be? So all that discussion point, the plans were done, and that's when that content, what is it beautiful? At that point, when this whole discussion was going on, there was this program on Sony TV, which was I forget that name now. It was with Sangeeta Ghosh, wherein uh, she was a hotelier in one of the hill stations, etc. So she was that independent woman. That was that picture which I realized when the client was talking about the consumer and the product. My first thing was, yeah, it was called Kehta Hai Dil Ji Le Zara. This was sometime in 2013, 2014 kind of space that this serial was there on Sony TV. So as a planner, the planning team had put in, Sony TV was nowhere in the picture at that point, because they felt that Sony TV wasn't doing well. Yes, it was number 3 or number 4 at that point, and it didn't make sense because we are only looking at the top channels, etc. So, but I said, no, but that content is, I'm not talking about Sony TV, but I've said that that content was very critical and it was very, very, I mean, intrinsic to this product, especially for the TG. I think we should look at it to convince the client what I had suggested, that on their Carrot Lane, when it's an online shopping portal, so when they come to the shopping space, if you could plug in a small kind of questionnaire, where did you see this product, how do you know about this product, and let's see whether what's the kind of response we get once we release this. So when we had done that whole content integration, we had done placements only on that. It's not about the product, we didn't showcase the product, but we are communication in that content space, which was critical for us. When we did that, everybody who came on that page during that whole activity period and after 2 weeks also post that activity, we found that there's still people saying that, okay, I've seen it on that particular show. So that told us that how you as a person, if you are very if you understand your content, your consumer and your product, you are able to really push the client and try and get such beautiful integrations, whether it is just basic placement of communication in that space, in that in that content, Or it is if you want to do any kind of integrations, whether it is placement of the product, whether you want to create any kind of engagement series with them, or you try and say that, okay, this association with this particular content is beautiful for my consumer, for my client, and how do I translate that into that relationship. So that was one glimpse as to how you look at from a converting it from a client and your sorry, the brand and the consumer kind of an space, that how do you look at it from that space. Any questions here, or can I look at the next space from a publisher space? We move on. So when I'm looking at it from a publisher space, there's a next small, hopefully that you will give me an answer here. If you really believe this question, you think that the publisher is important in this whole space, or it's not required? Yes, so when you say, all of you have said yes, but why do you say it is important? Can anybody elaborate on that?
Yeah, Anu, I'd like to take one. I think
Yeah.
it plays a really large role because I think you, me, we've been part of many sessions where we've given them the proper brief, but irrespective of that, they've come back with their sales deck
Yes.
instead of really understanding the idea. So I think very few publishers really get understanding of the product. Otherwise, I think most of them go through their sales pitch deck and follow that instead of really understanding, or they'll go with the ideas that would have been pitched for another brand and they try to blend. So very few publishers really understand the brand and product and come back with ideas based on that. So I think they play a massive role.
Definitely, definitely. That's beautifully said, Megha. Anybody else who wants to take any other angle or any experience?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that publishers usually are the biggest experts on their own content and the
True.
biggest experts on their own audience. So it
Yes.
would be remiss if we don't, take their own expertise into consideration when making our own, when we make our campaigns.
Yes, Achit. Perfectly well said, actually, because I've always believed that, and that's where I have also learned through experience. There are certain publishers, as Megha rightly said, they understand the product, irrespective of which. Here we, yes, where she's coming from and where I've come from is from an Intel, which is a little more difficult kind of a space. But irrespective of what the content is, to what the product is, how do you understand the product and how do you understand the client's need? Very few people, few publishers understand that. But what they have a huge backing of a network that they have, right? Irrespective of whether it is a small one standalone platform versus whether they are part of a large conglomerate, they have that strength because finally they have that connect with the consumer, which we are vying for, right? We want that consumer, and the platform is giving us that access to that consumer, and therefore the publisher is important to us. But we as the media people, understanding our client, and have to also understand the strengths and the weaknesses of that publisher. So when you're discussing any ideas or anything with any publisher, understanding the SWOT analysis of that publisher is very important. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What they will be able to pull off? What they won't be able to pull off? Whether they have the strength of creating good content from a brief that you give them from scratch, or do they have existing content which is superlative that you would like to ride on? Or so that is the SWOT analysis that you can do, and only you will be able to do the justice, because you understand your brand and the client at one side, and you have the understanding of the network. The sometimes the, as Megha said, they come from the lens of a sales pitch, right? They sometimes don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are. So because the only the sales team has a is coming to you. But when you're giving them a brief, there is a completely different team sitting behind the sales team who is working on all this. They are either called a marketing team, innovation team. Each publisher will have a different name to that. And so that's the team behind who's working on all this. And the sales team, like a typical salesperson, will take the brief from here and go and give it to them without applying their mind, their understanding, their interaction with the media team. And so therefore what happens is, what they would have told the marketing team or the innovations team, whatever team you call them, a branding team, that team is disjointed with what our ask is. So there are multiple times for me personally when I felt, okay, this is not going. So I will take up that. So I've realized that talking to the sales team is of no point. Yes, you give them the brief, but ensure that you have a discussion with the media team, with the branded content team, because they understand the crux, they know what it is, and you are able to communicate better without diluting your message to them exactly what you want. And therefore the output also then is better. And yes, without shortchanging the sales team कच्चा चबा जाएंगे अगर आप उनको कट करके चले जाओ तो. So you have to keep them in the loop, yes, but without brushing any feathers or rubbing any feathers, then you try and talk to them, get the branded content team, get them on board, get them to do. And so then you'll see that the output of your the innovate or the um, communication that comes out from them is far better than if you are doing this just postmangiri yahan se wahan kar dete. So it's a far better option that way, is what my learning is. The other, there was a question in between, but let me just complete this one point and I'll take that. In terms of your when I said that you know the strengths and weaknesses of the publisher, you should know what are the, because see, like for example, if I have to take a Times network as a large conglomerate that we work with, right, we may be working with few points only. We may be taking about only about 1/5 of their overall basket that they have. But there are so many other elements that are going to add value to your overall communication in some manner. So how are you able to ensure that the publisher is able to give you that piece, get it for you, and you are adding it to your overall communication, like the example that Megha gave you in the beginning when she talked about PC Pathshala. That was a massive activity. Yes, it was a digitally led, digital first kind of a campaign, right? But we had all the all the elements from the Times network, where there was print, there was radio, there was ground activations, there was TV. So all those elements we have taken into consideration and created such a big 360-degree kind of an activity. And when you go with something like that with the publisher, the kind of discussion point itself changes, because you are looking at it just not one digital media, because you need each media, like how we discussed in yesterday's session with WebHub, or the previous sessions also, where we said each medium has its own strengths and weaknesses. How you tap into that, saying no, we need this, we need this, you pushing them to deliver. Sometimes, and most times, not sometimes, most times, all of these different arms of that network are different profit centers. So they actually wouldn't want to talk, they will not talk, because then it is, if they are trying to give you that, because even though they will show it to you as value add, that we have gotten a print for you or a TV for you, but internally they are showcasing a cost there, and which is then adding up to your overall cost, right? So how you push all that together and make it a comprehensive plan for your client is that strength in your hands, and you are the creator of these kind of associations, because you seeing those strengths of that publisher, and you know what they can deliver for you and how you bring it together. So that's the point that I wanted to say. There was a hand up in between, I saw. Was that Pooja? If you can.
Yes.
Yes, yes, Pooja.
Yes, Anupama. I just
Yeah,
wanted to add something to the question you asked.
yeah.
So
I also feel that when it comes to content, it should resonate well with the publisher. Say, for example, a website. The kind of content that we are promoting on a particular website
Hmm.
should kind of fall in place with what we are promoting as content, right? Because otherwise,
Yes,
it would be a mismatch.
true. So
That's also
that's
important when you understand the publisher.
yes, so because you will not take up a publisher which will have, which is not talking to your, so when I'm talking about when I'm selecting a publisher also, as I said, when you're doing that SWOT analysis, that will be one of the questions will be whether it is right for my audience, for my client, whether my audience is there on that platform, whether if they are there, how much time they are spending, how are they engaging with that, are they delivering good this one. So it's just not about just not about the association, but that overall piece that you're talking about, whether it is the from the clients and the brands and the audience perspective at one side, the other portion is from the content that they have, whether they are safe, that's a safe content, they are they create well, they have the expertise to give us solutions at a better this one, they can give us scale. So when we for Intel, when we evaluate deals also, or any of these deals, we look at these 4, 5, 6 parameters and then decide whether that deal is falling in a in that space, if it is giving us a tick mark in terms of whether it is in from a reach perspective, whether it is from engagement perspective, whether it is from a whether they have the expertise in creating fresh content, whether they have their editorial team is involved in these kind of projects. So each of these different elements, that different parameters, and those parameters can be adapted, they are not sacrosanct here for one client. You adapt it depending on your client's needs for that particular project, and then you give them a score, then come at an weighted average and decide on, okay, these parameters, these set of publishers are good, their ideas are falling in these good spaces, and therefore how do we shortlist them and then take it forward for the future conversation.
No, I don't know
Yes.
if it's part of your, your agenda today, or not, but I remember we in 2020 we started doing this entire parameter analysis before even
Yeah.
sending the brief to the clients. We used to very clearly create entire parameter where we used to say,
Yeah.
"Iska strength kidhar hai?" I think the one that you talked about. I think
Yeah.
whenever you get some time, if you want to share it with the team, because I don't know how much is it as a practice done with other brands, but it really helped us also at the client to see what were the reasons why we have chosen. For example, we might tell them, I sent the brief to 10 people, but I've eventually shortlisted only 4 of them.
Can show one of the examples maybe.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can- In the meanwhile, if somebody had a question, you can continue. So till I search the space. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody who had a question?
So,
I
Anupama, yeah,
Yeah.
hi. So as you mentioned, like content is helping to build up the reach and to reach out to more people, right? But
Mm-hmm.
how should I convince or how should I pitch this to the brand who is more towards like ROI focused or is towards the revenue generation? So how should I pitch them that this content will play an important role for them?
See, when the content again from a ROI perspective, I don't know whether we have done anything like that, but where I am seeing a difference is because especially when you're looking at it from a perspective that there are certain aspects I'm giving again sorry, I go back to Intel, but unfortunately that's where we have the maximum, I think, points that we can bring forward here. So there are times when you want to explain a lot, you need, because just your 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or a 30-second commercial might not give you that kind of a what do you call, will not give you the explain that whole process or opportunity for to the consumer. So you would like, there are certain ways that you want to go connect with them, where you explain little more, whether you are doing in form of an article, whether you are doing it in form an advertorial, in a listicle, so those kind of stuff where you are going way little ahead beyond your commercial, so that you are giving them little time to read at their leisure, understand, and you are taking them to that destination wherever that landing page is, right? So you might not, finally it might not convert or whatever, but then you are engaging with them, because if they, you have been able to get them to read more onto their website, I think that is, as a media specialist, you have done that first job of getting them there, right? To give them that. So everything cannot be ROI, but getting them there and engaging with them also is a aspect which I think is a critical aspect of your overall discussion point with the client, is my take on this. I don't know whether I've answered your question or complicated it, but I feel that just doing, when you are giving them additional from a consumer perspective, the kind of engagement that we have with the consumer, and we are able to get them to uh, consume more, or to engage more with the brand, I feel you need to have that space there, and that's what my take is. um, did I answer your question or did I complicate it? I don't know.
नहीं नहीं अनुपमा ठीक है.
Mehak? Yeah.
Yes. So, usually, like as a strategist, as somebody who's probably even ideating, there is a very classic conundrum that I personally always end up encountering, right? Whether you go thought first or you go platform first, right? Because sometimes when you go thought first, it's a blue sky thinking. You rarely think about what could be the possible executional challenges, and those are the kind of things you only get to know when you have a conversation with the platform.
Correct.
The other side of this is that you know the platform so well, right? And you know the product, you know the audience, and you think that this platform would be a right fit, and you know the nitty gritties of it. You know that अच्छा यहाँ इसमें ये हो सकता है, इसमें ये हो सकता है, and therefore you start thinking while already in full awareness of the limitations of the platform, right? Which perhaps can cut your wings, if I can say that, when you're trying to think large. So in your experience, how have you tried to sort of strike that balance कि ऐसा भी ना हो कि एकदम tactical हो जाए because आप एकदम platform out सोच रहे हो, but आप like you're not even trying to,
You need
you're
quality
not even,
versus
yeah,
the
you're
reach.
not trying
You
to
are,
downsize your thoughts. Sometimes like the idea that you come up with may be so grand and it looks really good on paper, but uh, when you start thinking of the nitty gritties, it's not that practical anymore. So how do you
so
get
yeah,
that
so
balance?
that's a good question, because many a times it's happened for, there is a idea and you may be saying, thinking that you need that kind of scale, etc. But sometimes what happens is, a partner who may not have that scale, but they've got fabulous content space, or their writers are good, or the way they come up with this association or the integration, they are able to give you fantastic ideas. And also not just giving ideas, but they are able to take on the inputs from you, take it to a next level and deliver to and reach the consumer, right? So sometimes taking that, but you should have that confidence with the client. You are able to showcase the difference in terms of, yes, I'm sacrificing reach, yes, I may be going not with the leader, I'm going with the second lead as a platform, or
Right.
this one, right? I'm not going with the lead, because that will be the first thing that you will do, that if I'm doing something, I need the largest. Not necessarily that you need to go to the largest, even if you have a smaller base, but if you are given them quality and you are getting that fantastic conversion from that perspective, I think that's fair enough how you are able to do that, even at a small scale. Then see how it goes. And then if you want, then you can go to the next round and scale it up. I'll give you again little dated, but maybe, but the way I was looking at it from, we had done this with print that we did. For example, if you could do with the Times of India, we were doing one advertorial series versus looking at a Hindustan Times. But doing with Hindustan Times, the what gave me the whole flip, though it was not the leader, though it does not have that many editions, maybe it is only Delhi at that point. Bombay was also a fledgling then. It was some years back that I'm talking about. But what it gave me is it gave me a combination of a English and a Hindi. At that point, Intel was looking at going into the smaller tiers in the Hindi heartland, and it was giving me that space of talking Hindi to that consumer and English. And I had two content series going simultaneously with different take for an English audience and for a Hindi audience. And the the HT team at that point was so strong in this bit of understanding what was required and understanding their consumers and how do I integrate that communication and get that reach it to the consumer was so beautifully handled at that point. Now that whole setup is changed. There's so many different people, but this is answering that question to you, that we agreed, we were able to convince with the numbers. We are not saying that okay, these are the lead, and we're not going to fibbing there saying okay, this is the best here for you. No, we very open mindedly went there knowing that they are not the lead, but they have the quality. That's again the process. I'll just show you. It gives you in terms of the analysis that we keep doing in terms of your whether what are their strengths and weaknesses. I'll just put this up here. Give me a moment. You can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, can I see my screen? So what we had done was, so this was for an ITDM kind of audience. This was for the small and medium businesses. So we had looked at different media, and for each of them, we had given them by medium, we had given them scores. Okay. So if it was greater than 5 million reach or 1 million reach or whatever. So basis that we had given them scores. And then we had looked at affinity and at CPT. So all the three levels we had each had scoring for each of them. Then we had looked at for each of the publishers, we had these different parameters, right? So we had this base ones, which is reach, affinity, CPT. We had that. Then we looked at for all these parameters, reach, affinity, content, environment. How's the content? That was one question there. It may not be the best, but the content environment is very critical where my content is going to come up. Project management expertise. Do they have the strength? Do they understand project management, or they outsource it to somebody? The team is not equipped. They're very haphazard in their this one. So that is one strength. Whether they have a network strength, or are they standalone publisher, or they have a huge network as a banking, whether it is cost effective. So then basis all this, we give them factors here, and then we arrive at individual uh, averages, weighted average for each of this. Basis these scores, then we look at a network level also. So we club all of them at a network level. So they have, like, for example, CNBC, they have a TV and a digital. So the proposal, how it can give us uh, how is it strong in sorry how is it strong enough. So we look at a individual score, at a network, what is the score that they have, and then we arrive at a final score basis and average there, as to understand which, with this score as your average, anything greater than 3.5 would be good for us to consider, and the others we don't consider, however much it may be strong from a overall platform perspective. So how are you looking at it? And basis that we select and we then consider. This is not done prior. We do it post getting their this one also, their proposals from us. We brief them, and basis their activity, the basis their what is the kind of content that they've come back to us with, the ideas that they've come back to us with. Then we weight them, and then we share this. And that's how then we finally clean it up and we present it to the client like this. Did you all get
Clear.
to see it and understand how we are showcasing it? So this is a process that we have been following. Earlier, we used to do with similar web, but now we do with Comscore because Comscore gives us a little bit more bandwidth. But the beauty of similar web is we also get to understand the bounce rate. So we try and understand that whether the bounce rate is how is the bounce rate of that uh, publisher. So I mean, for that platform, how is it? And then that also we are looking at it as one of the factors. And as I said, these factors are not sacrosanct. As a team, you can decide what are the factors that you want to uh, showcase or focus on. Some which will not be important, some which is very important. Like, for example, for Intel, environment is very, very critical for us because we have lots of guidelines from the global guidelines that we can't be in part of various, like a big boss kind of content will definitely never be there, or those kind of guidelines are there. So basis that, that becomes a critical space for us. For some client that might not be very important, but some other context might be very important. And so each client, you can, depending on what the requirement is, you can have these that scoring grid that you can create, and that gives you at least it may not be the best guide, but at least it gives you a guide to a shortlist, and there is at least some bit of sense that you're creating in that, instead of just being, okay, I like this face and I like that face, and therefore that will be part of my plan. No, there is a reason behind why you have said what you have said and how you have proposed a particular publisher to the client.
Clear. Thank you.
Understood. Any questions? Adi, you have can't be one standard answer to this, but how do you convince a brand which is completely invested in promoting global assets to localize and drive that connect? Adi, you know that answer better. uh, I'll give you again this whole piece when we had done, when Intel in 2009, 10, they had launched this whole family of processors. Okay. And they had come with such um, all the English creatives, they looked very all Firang creatives, and it was very difficult for. And they had this whole given us the objectives that we should go into the smaller tiers. It was going to be so difficult. How do you handle that? So we had to convince them that how these markets, how the audience talks differently, speaks differently, this is the content, gave them the flavor of the content, that this is how this content is consumed by, this is the kind of people. And you just don't, because just we are in one room and this is how our peers are seeing content, not necessarily that same NCCS AB, when you go 500 kilometers away from the place you are, or 1000 kilometers, 2000 kilometers, every district you move to, the content consumption is different. If you understand the geography of your the country, most of us don't know, right? As youngsters, I mean, as when we were in school or whatever, geography was always a banned subject for us. We used to hate it, history used to hate. But for a media person, I feel geography is critical, especially if you are talking about how it is changing from every 100 kilometers you go, you will find a different dialect. Within the same state, you will have different dialects, how it is important. Their tastes are different, their culture is different, their likes are different. So when you're able to get that understanding and say that, even if you look at, if you switch on TV and you go to all the GCs, why are the GCs showing different content on different channels? It will be Hindi, but some channels are focusing more on families, Gujarati families. Some will be showcasing more on Punjabi families, because that is the strength of that channel in that particular market, right? So you will find certain channels having certain kind of flavors. From there on, you try and you get the nuances of what is it that is sticking with this audience. Just because I hate, and the thumb rule of any content, to understand content, what you hate as content is loved by the rest of the country. So that is going to work for sure. And something what you hate, others might like, or if you like somebody, something somebody will hate. So especially when you're going into smaller towns, it's very critical to understand the cultural, geographical, all those kind of nuances, and try and see what are those small nuances that you are able to bring in. And so therefore, answering Adi's question, we had done at that point, telling it, were able to explain and showcase to them, see how it is changing. And that's how we were able to show, when they had done this whole family of processors that they had done, i3, i5, i7, when they had launched it at that point in 2010, we were able to do this. And that was the first time they had done star also. We had done this star parivar swagat kar raha hai core parivar ka, and how we had taken a family of, from a star family, one of the serials, and used each member and showcasing them as to how these processors are smart. And we can't show the processor, how are you, we can't show the processor, but we are able to take the nuance of that, take the attributes of that communication and take it. Okay, it's a smart processor, i3 is a smart processor. We took that smart as a part and saying, okay, if you have this computer, you will become smart like the computer. So got that connect, made it closer. Yes, on especially on Intel at those days, our approvals were used to be all up to global, and we needed approvals, and it was a mammoth task, but I think we succeeded because we were so convinced as a team that that is what we need to do, and we were able to showcase with examples as to, you can't have these kind of communication and go to the lower tiers. You need that communication there, convincing them, whether it was numbers, whether it was showcasing case studies, or showing them reality. We took them to the market to show them, look at this, how they speak, how they stay. This is an NCSS a home. We went up to that extent to get that convinced, and we were able to, we were succeeded at that point. But I don't think we have that kind of time and leeway now, Megha. But I think for most clients, I think especially when you have something like this, and I sincerely believe, this is from my experience, if you, from your heart and your gut, you feel that it is going to work, no, you really will fight it out. Like how Megha fights for something that we believe in, she will go fight for it, and we will ensure that yes, it will go through, but finally, whether it is for money or something else, that it will fizzle out. But at least it gets convinced, it gets a hearing, because you are convinced internally that this is how we are. And that passion has to show, that passion, that understanding of the consumer, that understanding of that market should come across from your voice, from your heart, from your, literally, I mean, you can, nowadays you're doing it on Teams, etc. You should, as if Anu is jumping out of the Teams and telling you, that kind of a feeling that you get. I don't know, with that, if that there is passion, most of the work gets done, especially if you believe in it. I think content, most of it, content is, uh, I feel, comes from the heart and the gut. If you feel that yes, this is my consumer, you therefore necessity to understand the consumer and then take it forward. And I have been blabbering, and I'll stop blabbering. And Harsimran has a question: how vastly has branded content creation or implementation has changed the advertising universe? Do we have data on this? I don't think there is data. Kamalika would be I9. Yes, I9 plus plus, but I don't think there is data from a content creation. But that gives you from a perspective again. I don't think it shows data, but if you do like a BLS and all that, I think that helps you a lot, because with that same example of that which we did with Core Parivar Ka, we did, that was launched in sometime in April, May, and we did a similar kind of activity again in during the Diwali time, and post Diwali we did that whole BLS. At that point, the people still remembered what we did in May, and I think that gave us a lot of courage. And more than courage, it gave us that satisfaction that what we did was right. And at that point, women were not really the decision makers of computers, but that again points with some, I don't recall the number of points, but there was a huge jump spike in the decision making, the woman being part of the decision making of the computer for the family, because it was critical for her child's uh, development and progress. So those are the things. Like in the recent, this one which we did BLS for, we had done that content, not directly content on TV. We did the ICA activity. ICA is part of the content that you can place in the content of the TV serial, and it will not come as part of the break. So in content advertising, that is what it is called. And we had experimented that for Intel. And that again showed extremely good, the BLS showed good traction there. So yes, Whisper Media, we had done through Whisper Media. And that again, it's for clients who don't have TV commercials, don't have TV activity. So it will not, the communication is static. It doesn't come as part of the thing, but then it holds on there for 4-5 seconds, and it's a good visibility because it will be shown in that episode 2-3 times, and it really gets captured. So these guys, quick, what is that? Quick. I forget the name. So they've done it extensively. They have used it, and we tried doing it, and it gave us results. But unfortunately, we're not able to take it forward. But that showed us. I mean, yeah, with this one, yeah, Quick Heal. Thank you, Harsimran. Yes, Quick Heal. Quick Heal uses it very, very regularly. They use only Whisper Media, and they have done some extensive work with them, and they have seen benefits in that. Any other questions? I have spoken so much. People have got bored. So just let me quickly talk about the processes that we talk about. When we do this whole activity, it's mammoth in terms of the backend that you need to handle, right? Because whether it is in terms of approvals, whether it is in terms of ensuring the guidelines are met, timelines are met, because there you are dependent on so many people, so timelines have to be met. There are legal approvals which are required, payments which become, certain times you need to give advance payments. How do you maneuver that? Because some clients will not pay you advance. So how do you work with your finance teams? And those are lengthy approval processes. So how do you get that? So you have to, as a person who's leading that whole project, you have to ensure, understand your internal systems, what works, what doesn't work, understand the client systems, what works, what doesn't work, and also the publishers. So you are like one central point, understanding each one to ensure that you maneuver all these pieces to work quickly and get those approval processes, and without any hindrances, that you are able to execute it. So those are those checks which need to be done. You need to do multiple calls with these things to ensure that your timelines are met, because there will be celebrities part of your discussions, and then celebrities will not give you dates. You would have approved something with the client, something will not go through. So a lot of back and forth, a lot of sometimes stress, because last minute many things can change, but a lot of fun. That there is no taking away. There's a lot of fun, a lot of adrenal rush that can go in, the kind of achievement that you feel. I mean, when everything goes off well, smoothly, it really, you feel really accomplished from that, when the project goes off well and you get accolades on that project. That nobody can take away, but that the process can be tiring, and but as I said, that passion takes you, and nothing is stops you from there. So that was my bit, and I have taken almost an hour. Any questions, please? I kept blabbering, but there were not many questions. I hope I'm not bored people. Was it? I went a little fast also. Any more questions?
No, I realize, no, I think people are in just festive.
Yes. Yeah.
There are no questions. We can wrap it up.
Yes. Any questions, you can reach out to me. Feel free to reach out at any point. I would love to help you such a way where you get more gifts during festive season. Then your Dan ethics person will come behind you, Tejveer, so you can't get more gifts from them. But yeah, relationships over a period of time. How that one point where I've said, how do you make relationships? How do you build that relationship? Yes, it's always a give and take. Always remember that clients keep coming and going, but that media house and you are together for multiple clients. So you can't burn bridges with your partners. And if you treat them as partners, you will see that kind of reciprocation that comes from the partner. But if you treat them as vendors, okay, this transaction it's done, no, always understand, because there could be cases wherein there are certain weak links at that point. How do you take that? You are able to convince the client, okay, we'll take this is a little weaker portion or a weaker channel or a weaker uh, publisher within that whole network, but if we support them a little bit, we'll get something additional which is going to add value to our overall campaign. So a give and take, I think that's how you are able to build strong relationships. And treating them as this one, treating them as partners takes you a long way instead of treating them as vendors. So
Anu, you have one question from Tejveer.
I think I answered that, didn't I? How to make relation with public such a way where you get gift. We can't get more gifts, as I said, that the ethics team will come behind you. But as yes, because the way after I'm not actively in the media, but I've made over a period of time a lot of friends there, right? So, Pehla, Amit, right, you have to give them business. You can't expect anything there. And I see, for me, I have my ethics or my, this one was very clear that I don't, because I used to buy a lot. I used to be a buyer also, right? So for me, I used to feel that if I'm taking something, some favor from them means that I will lose my strength of buying, or my pushing them or negotiating them hard won't be possible. So I would have my certain clauses around it. So that's not necessarily everybody's this one. But yeah, but more or less, I think we're building relationships as partners, treating them as they're also humans, giving them time, listening to them. Sometimes we say, okay, I don't have the time, I'll not meet them. No, meet them, talk to them, because the nuggets you get from them is to understand what is happening in the market. What are your competition doing? How are you? How is your business doing? How I can help? So those are the signs. You don't have to talk only when there is business. Keep talking even though there is no business, and so they feel that yes, you are partners for I'm truly partners and not just transactional association. So I think that's how you build relationships. Social listening reports. I think we have a tool we have, right, Meka? I'm not sure on that. If you can take that question.
Yeah, I'm just connecting. It's Connect called. I was just giving her the link. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Fine.
Yeah.
I hope it was useful.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you. If no more questions, a happy new year in advance. Lots of love to all of you. Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you,
so
Megha,
much.
for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anu.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.